Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Current Students Campus Life and Residence Life informational session. My name is Jamar Orr, and I am the Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students here at Roosevelt University. And it's my pleasure to be speaking with you today about what you as a student can expect upon your return to campus. This is the fifth webinar in our Return to Campus series. At the end of the webinar, there'll be a link to all the previous sessions that have occurred so that you can have reference to that as well. This session will be focused specifically on the student experience and what students need to know and what they can expect for when they return to campus. Just to go over the agenda, what we'll be covering today, we'll cover a little bit about kind of some general COVID campus return information, talking about self-assessment in the app, contact tracing, and some quarantine isolation information. Then we'll transition to talk about residence life, and then we'll be talking about campus life, and then finishing up with student health services, and then lastly going into our question and answer period. So as we are presenting our materials, feel free to utilize the Q&A box to add any questions that come up as we're talking or any questions that you had previous to the session that you would like us to talk about relating to any of the topical areas. All right, so with that, we'll hop in and we'll get started. All right, so the first thing that I want to talk about is the daily self-assessment that all students will have to do every single day. Aaron Rester just did an awesome webinar on using the Return to Campus app, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I have linked it so you can review the full session that he did. But it is important to know that all students will be required to complete the daily self-assessment before they're granted access to campus. In addition, our residential students who are living in the Wabash building will be required to verify that they have successfully completed the self-assessment before they're allowed to enter into campus. So they'll be showing their app to the security desk at 14, and then they'll be allowed to go into campus. So if you haven't seen the app, it is up and running. So I highly encourage all of you to download the app and to utilize the self-assessment return to campus persona. That way you are moving through the entry points a lot quicker and not having to do the manual process. So when you log on, you'll see the very first screen that's on the left, the daily self-assessment. You'll click on that and it'll take you to a list of questions specifically designed to help us understand if you are at risk for COVID-19 or if you have been diagnosed or exposed. And so these questions are really, really important in terms of helping us ensure the safety of the campus community. So you have to do this every single day. Some of the questions are, do you think you might have COVID-19? Are you experiencing any fever greater than 100 degrees Fahrenheit? Are you experiencing any new chills? Things like that. And so after you've completed the assessment, hopefully you'll see a green check. I've demonstrated it here, and that will allow you to gain access to campus. As I said, there's a full webinar all about this that is linked into this presentation as well. So some of you may be curious about, well, what happens when a student doesn't get a green check mark or has potentially tested positive for COVID-19? What does the university do in those scenarios? Well, first and foremost, that information, despite how it is communicated, will always be sent to me and the Dean of Students office. So that will be if you tell a faculty member or if you send an email about it, that information is going to come back to me and the DOS office. At that point, a member of the DOS staff will reach out to you just to check in and discuss next steps. If needed, isolation or quarantine will be implemented. And so if you're like me, you've been hearing these terms for a long time and may not understand what is the difference between isolation and quarantine. So a student who is in isolation because they themselves have tested positive or they have symptoms, versus quarantine, which is for individuals who have come in contact with an infected person and they themselves are a personal close contact. We'll be talking about more about what that looks like a little bit later. In addition, after we've determined if isolation or quarantine is warranted, we'll also be talking with you to determine the period of infection. This will help us in determining who you may have been in close contact with so that we can work with them to determine if they need to quarantine or isolate as well. We'll also be sharing with you the first eligible date that you'll be allowed to return to campus life and go through the steps that you'll need to have completed in order to return. It is important to note And we are aware of the fact that this information is very sensitive and is private information. And so please note that this information will be kept confidential and will be stored in our safe servers and will only be shared with individuals who need to know the information, such as members of the Dean of Students team. So what will happen while you're in quarantine or in isolation? So it will look a little bit different if you're on campus, i.e. a resident, versus off campus as a commuter, but some of the steps will overlap. So if possible, we would encourage you to continue to do your work to the extent that you're feeling well enough to be able to do it. Where that isn't the case and we need to follow up with faculty on your behalf, we'll be sure to do that. Students who are on campus will be housed on a quarantine floor in either Wabash or the University Center. Their IDs will also be turned off so that they don't have access to enter main campus. And then we'll be working with you to explain the process for quarantine and isolation, and that'll be done by Residence Life staff if you're living on campus. We'll also be delivering meals to you daily, as well as doing daily well-being checks. For off campus, it's a little bit different in that you won't be physically with us, but we'll still be doing weekly well-being checks with you, and we'll also be talking with you about any other additional support services that may be needed from the university in order to help you successfully complete the quarantine period. So returning to campus after quarantine or isolation, what does that look like? So if you are a contact who has been quarantined, you need to complete 14 days in quarantine from your last contact with the case. And this is irrespective of whether or not you have a negative test result. You also have to be showing no symptoms or no confirmation of a COVID-19 infection. It's a little bit different if you're in isolation. If you're in isolation, again, this means that you're exhibiting symptoms or have a positive test. You'll need to complete at minimum 10-day isolation with at least 24 hours of having been fever-free without using any fever-reducing medications, and you'll need an additional note from a healthcare provider which clears you to return to campus. If not, then you have to wait a full 20 days in isolation with, again, at least 24 hours being fever-free without the use of any fever-reducing medications. So in the 20-day scenario, you don't need a note of clearance from your healthcare provider, but if you are following the 10-day path and your symptoms have cleared up, you're 24 hours fever-free, you will need a doctor's note to clear you to return to campus at that point. Additionally, many of you have heard, and we've talked about this a great deal, but I think it's important to touch on again about the Chicago quarantine order. So Chicago implemented an emergency travel order that required anyone entering or returning to Chicago from a state that's experiencing a surge that they must quarantine for 14 days. They recently updated the guidance so that if you're in a surge state, you're allowed to quarantine in your home for that 14-day period prior to coming to campus. And as part of the app, we will be asking that you attest daily that you're in compliance with this order. This is also relevant for our international students who may be returning from international travel. Based on CDC guidance, you also are required to quarantine for 14 days prior to coming to campus. Based on our space constraints, travel-based quarantine cannot happen on campus because we need to maintain those spaces in the event that a student needs to be isolated or quarantined for health reasons.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hilda. I'm the Assistant Dean for Student Life and Housing. And next up, we're going to talk a little bit about moving into the residence halls, what to expect once you arrive, programming, and what the fall semester will look like. So thank you again for hanging in there with us. This is the life of Zoom and technology nowadays, so we appreciate you all. So can you believe it? We're about 2 weeks away from the first move-in day. So I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about the move-in process and what you all have to do if you are expected to move into our residence hall, so either the Wabash building or the University Center. So very important, all of our residents, if you have signed up for housing, completed your application and contract and received a room assignment, you have been to the housing portal, which I include a little picture of here on the screen. So there is a section in the housing portal labeled move-in requirements. And so part of your move-in requirements is that you have to read over a few documents and complete a couple of things, okay? So the first page that you will see as part of the move-in requirements is learning about the move-in process. It's super important, and I would encourage you that if you're gonna have anyone come and join you during move move-in, that you also share this information with them. So maybe some evening you can just together sit down and read it. It really outlines the step-by-step process that you will go through when you arrive on campus. How do you pull up in front of the street? What is going to happen? How many guests can come with you? What is the first station, what's going to happen at the first station, so on and so forth. So make sure that you take a look at it. So that is the first page, which outlines the move-in process. The second page of that section is the Health and Wellness Standards Agreement. So this is a very important agreement, and this is going to be a set of standards that we ask all students to follow while they live on campus. And so this really talks about really elaborating on what Dean Orr was talking about, as far as like, what do you do in the case that you feel ill? What do you do if you're talking to your roommates and they are telling you that they feel ill? What do you do if you go home and realize that you've come in contact with someone? Do you return to campus? It just really helps you understand how to respond when you're living on campus, and how to properly communicate to the university. It also talks about pretty simple standard things that we all probably have been doing at home during the pandemic, but we really want to re-emphasize, right? So make sure you're washing your hands, make sure you're wearing a mask, make sure you're cleaning your space. If you haven't thought about or talk to your roommates, we encourage you when you arrive on campus to talk to your roommates about how to maintain your space as clean as possible, because it's really, really important during this time. So that is all outlined during in the Health and Wellness Standards Agreement. And so we ask that you, once you review it, that you sign that you are in agreement with following those standards. The third portion of that section, oh, sorry, Tamara, if you can go back just one, talks about a COVID-19 test, and it outlines what it is that we need you to do. So essentially, we need every resident to, prior to moving in, take a COVID-19 test, and then provide us a result. So there is a place where you can upload those results. You do need to take the test 5 days prior to your move-in appointment, okay? And then finally, we have the move-in appointments page. We do ask that every resident who is moving in sign up for a move-in appointment. This is very important. We will not allow you to move in without a move-in appointment. And so if you show up without a move-in appointment on any day that you choose, you will experience a very long wait time, right? And so please make sure that you are signing up for a move-in appointment. Important things to keep in mind that I want to highlight, right? You will be allowed to have guests on campus during move-in, but you can only bring 2 people. So pick your 2 people that are going to come with you, and that's it. And the other important thing is that your guests will only be allowed to be on campus with you for 2 hours. So the 2 hours will begin when you enter the building. Campus safety will be recording at the time that your guests come in. And so we will be monitoring that, and we'll be strict about the 2-hour limit. And there's finally a lot of other move-in information, such as what to pack, what to bring, what not to bring, etc., online at the Roseville website. So all you have to do is search for move-in information, and that will appear. We can go to the next slide. If you haven't taken a look at the move-in dates, I show them here for everyone's reference, but we are starting with new freshmen, new transfers, and international students coming from August 19th through Sunday the 23rd. And the reason for that is because that population, new freshmen and new transfer students, have to be here ideally before new student orientation starts that following week. And so we really want you to come early so that you can get settled and be able to go through new student orientation on campus. And then our returning students, both undergrad and grad, will be coming the following week. When you arrive on campus, you will notice that the Wabash building is going to be looking different, and that the residence hall portion of the building will also look a little different. So there will be lots of signage throughout the corridors, in the lounges, different spaces, to really help you understand how to best live in the space to follow social distancing guidelines, right? So here I provide a picture of just a hallway. You will see that there are arrows that point what direction you should walk so that you're not running into each other. Elevators are marked to really limit the capacity of the elevators. And again, always asking you to wear a mask so that you are protecting yourself and others. I also wanted to point out that the suite maximum has changed. You can go back real quick, Jamar, sorry. Yep, the suite maximum has changed. So students are allowed to have friends over to their spaces. However, at no point can there be more than 6 people in a suite. I also wanted to point out that the guest policy has been modified. And so all of this information has been updated in our residence hall policies that you can find available through the website. No guests will be allowed during the entire month of August in the Wabash building. And that is because we will be having a lot of move-in days. And so we can't manage if you have moved in to have guests and then also have the guests here from the move-in process. So starting on August 31st, residents of the Wabash building will be allowed to check in 1 guest. If you are a resident of the University Center, you will be allowed to check in 1 guest starting on September 14th, which is the time when their move-in days end. The dining center will also be looking a little different. So as you can see here, the different stations where you would go to get your food have also been identified and marked to show you where you can stand. There is going to be a limit on the amount of people that can go inside of the dining like food area where you are collecting your meals, right? And so there may be a time when there is a small line outside. There is only 1 entry point and exit point, and again, that is to help with traffic flow. The stations will also be marked so that you understand exactly what is in each area and can go directly there. And we've eliminated in the dining center the self-serve utensils for any stations that at one point would have been open food stations. So like the salad bar, the items will be still available, but everything's going to be packaged up so that you can just grab and go versus serving yourself. And then finally, the dining center portion. So the space where students, staff and faculty would normally gather to eat. We have reduced capacity in seating there, again, to follow social distancing guidelines. And then you can also go up to your room to eat your food there or to your office. As far as events happening on campus and opportunities for engagement, I wanted to share that we are excited. We have worked all summer to try to figure out how to still provide a robust and exciting and enriching engagement opportunities for all of you. So some things will be the same and some things will be different. One of the things that remain the same is that the Residence Life staff will still be on site helping you. We are always here 365, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we do have 1 RA still on every floor that will be there to help and support you. You can find information about who your RA is on the Roosevelt website. Just search for Meet My RA and you can find your RA based on the floor. And as far as events and engagement opportunities, a lot more virtual experiences will be provided and available. An example of this would be like a floor meeting. We're no longer going to have floor meetings in the same capacity that we used to in the past. So a lot more virtual engagement via social media, Zoom, and other platforms. And still some person-to-person activities. They will just all have limits on how many people can attend. And so we will be asking people to RSVP to events so that we can make sure that we are not having large gatherings of people. Thank you all. And next up is Emily Alvello talking to us about campus life.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Hilda. I work for the Center for Student Involvement, and we are a mighty department of 2, and we do a lot of things in the Center for Student Involvement. Some of those things include orientation, which we will really dive into a little bit. But mainly, we want to make sure that you all know that the Center for Student Involvement really is here to enhance school spirit, social interactions on campus, and we intentionally creating some leadership experiences and opportunities on campus, either virtually this year or small groups like Hilda said, being able to have students that are on campus or coming to campus meet in small groups. So we support student engagement and undergraduate new student orientation for all campuses, and that is something that's new for us. As we grow and expand, we're able to provide more resources and support to the entire Roosevelt community, and so we're really excited about that. So CSI is also home to all of our clubs and organizations. I'll get into a little bit more of the numbers of that in a second. Campus-wide events, so homecoming, right? So school pride types of things. We have Social Justice Week, things like we help manage SGA elections. So all of those things are coming through and from the Center for Student Involvement. So we're the hub for all of those pieces. Next slide. So this year we're really excited because we are going to have a virtual platform. I know a lot of people are wondering, what are we going to do with us being primarily virtual? So we have a virtual platform that we're getting that we should have fully implemented hopefully in September, that nobody has to do any type of additional registration. It's part of your single sign-on. So as a student, you have access. Actually, every member of the Roosevelt community will have access to this. And so what this means is if you are interested in joining an event or a club, all of that will be accessible virtually. You will be able to check out clubs and orgs, contact their membership, attend meetings, find out when activities are going to happen. And if you are part of a club and org, you're going to have all these accessible resource pieces for you to help manage your organization, to help communicate to the students that are interested in working with you. It's all self-contained within this site. So it's going to really support our student involvement and engagement and bring it to a whole nother level. So we're very excited about that. This platform also will allow us to have our student involvement fair virtually. We will try to see what it can look like depending on, state and local regulations, if we can meet in person too. So we're playing things by ear, but we're really glad that we have these resources and platforms to allow students to maintain their engagement on campus. So things that we've always had, we've had online club registration. As of spring last semester, we had we did have virtual trainings too. So we had virtual trainings and opportunities that became more available in the spring of 2020. We have an online event proposal and budget proposal request form that was implemented in March, and we have that accessible and available for student orgs and groups this fall as well. Zoom meetings, every student is actually allowed to have a 45-minute created Zoom meeting that they can do on their student account. If a meeting has to be longer than that, our professional staff or a group's advisor will have to coordinate that meeting and then transfer the host responsibilities later. So virtual events and activities are going to be happening. Our SPEED programming board, which SPEED actually stands for Students Programming for Enrichment, Enlightenment, and Development. A lot of people don't know that, but that's actually what they stand for. And so they will have all of their events kind of planned out and ready to go at the start of the academic year. We're already fully planned out in September. And so we're really excited to kind of have activities, dancing, virtual gatherings, game nights that people can be a part of. In addition to that, we also have the SAFAC, which is our Student Activity Fee Allocation Committee. And those are that's a group of students that were voted into those positions who really care about managing the student activities fee. And so they are responsible for getting requests for funding from clubs and orgs, and they go over the event form with that group, and then they make decisions based on the proposal, what gets allocated and approved. And so they generally approve a lot of things. Last year alone, in the fall, there were 25 events that they approved. In the spring before March, spring break, they had 12 events that they approved. And they remained accessible and open through the remainder of the year. However, student groups just weren't ready to plan. They were adjusting to so many things, and we completely understand that. In addition, in the spring semester, SPEED actually was able to host 35 events, I believe. And so we had a series of events, passive, active, video recordings, things that people could interact with, engage with personally, or later at a different time when it made sense for them. So just know that we're going to continue doing those this year as well. and actually it was 35 active clubs and orgs that we had last year. So I apologize with my numbers. I mixed those up a little bit. But SPEED actually had, I believe it was 15 active events in the spring semester after we went virtual. So Student Government Association is also a group that I advise personally, and they are really excited to continue to be the advocates and voice of the student body. There will be opportunities to engage with them. We will be actually reaching out come September to invite folks to come and be part of the student government body. So please look out for those emails and get involved if you are interested in that experience. Next slide. So new student orientation, I'm sure the majority of folks have a lot of questions around this. So new student orientation in brief is a orientation experience that is intended for incoming first-year undergraduate students and transfer undergraduate students. In addition to that, it's important to know that this experience is intended for folks who are in the College of Arts and Sciences, the College of Education, the College of Business, and the Robert Morris Experiential College. The CCPA has their own orientation experience that is very specific to their program. However, because we're virtual this year, students will actually be able to access the recordings from orientation and see kind of what was going on. So that's a benefit to being virtual, that we're expanding the opportunity for people who maybe would not have been able to engage and be part of our orientation experience. So we're really excited to offer that. So we are completely virtual this year. All of our sessions will be virtual. There will be interactive opportunities, and there will also be social opportunities to kind of watch. We're going to have a magician one night, and then there's going to be informational resources as well. We have 2 pre-orientation options, and I'll get into that in a minute. And we are excited to offer those. We decided not to do any type of position caps or experience caps, which means as long as somebody is interested and they are fully enrolled, we're gonna allow them to attend. So if you are interested, please make sure to pre-register for a pre-orientation experience. It is separate from orientation. And then we do have 3 essentially half-day required orientation sessions, and I'll get into the schedule in the next few slides. And then we have evening hangouts and evening events. And so that's something that we know is missing from the in-person experience, and we wanted to make sure to continue to bring that to our student body. We also understand that there's not enough time to cover all the things we usually would in an in-person experience. And because of that, and because we want to keep everybody's attention span like at a optimal place, and we don't want to overwhelm folks, we do have pre-recorded sessions that are detailed information on resources, important things that you need to know and navigating being a student. And those will be pre-recorded and available on Blackboard for you all. In addition to that, because we do have some residents on campus who are first-year students, we will be having virtual watch parties or in-person watch parties of the virtual experiences that are going on, so that those students have an opportunity, obviously keeping in mind the social distancing requirements and expectations for safety purposes, but allowing space for students to gather so that they don't feel isolated while they're on campus. Next slide. So these are amazing orientation leaders. We are so excited to have them be a part of our experience, and they are really excited to have you all come and be part of orientation this year. So I don't need to name all of them, but just know that they are more than happy to answer questions, to kind of connect with folks, especially in the evening sessions, be one-on-one and follow up and be engaging and have personal time with students virtually. So they are here to support you in your transition to college, and they're really excited to have you come. All right, so our pre-orientation sessions there's 2 different sessions. They are on Tuesday. The first opportunity that you can sign up for is called FLY, and it stands for First Lead Yourself. It is a leadership intended program experience that is experiential. It allows for self-development, personal exploration, exploring and understanding your goals and your values, and navigating what that means in a leadership role. And so that's the intention of FLY. LEAP is a similar and different program in the sense that it is operated through our Multicultural Student Support Services office, and they are offering the it's called Learning Empowerment Access and Purpose. And it was established and created to support our students who identify as students of color or first gen in navigating what it means to be on a college campus, and providing support and resources to that student demographic. They are really going to intentionally talk about imposter syndrome and make sure that students feel supported academically as they transition in this experience. So that is the purpose of LEAP. There will be group activities in the evening, again, that are optional, specifically for those students who signed up and registered for those 2 pre-orientation sessions. Also, before we move to the next slide, that design was designed in a design competition that SPEED hosted, and it was a student that made that creation, and so we are acknowledging them, and I just wanted to put that out there as well. Next slide. So orientation, the actual required days and orientation flow, basically is 9 to 12 on Wednesday, 9 to 12 on Thursday, and same kind of flow of 6 p.m. There's going to be the evening Laker Life meetings, and so that really is just hosted with students and the orientation leaders. It's going to be fun and games, chatting, getting to know each other, kind of icebreakers, and then there's the events in the evening. And so we're going to have a beatbox national champion on Wednesday night, and then we're going to have a magician on Thursday night. During the day for the general orientation on Wednesday, it's a welcome. We're going to cover the history of Roosevelt and its social justice mission. We also are going to cover a little bit about Title IX and what that means as a student, and understanding your student rights and responsibilities on campus. And so we're, really excited to have that session. Again, we're making it short enough so that it's not overwhelming, but content filled so that it feels fruitful and valuable. On Thursday, we're calling it our academic orientation day. In the morning, we're going to have sessions with the deans of those respective colleges that I mentioned earlier, and they'll talk through kind of what that college is about, and they have their own sessions created, and they're excited to welcome you in those experiences too. After that, we're going to have either a breakout session for the Common Read with the first year seminar faculty. They will be hosting in partnership with orientation leaders who all have read the Common Read book as well this summer, and they will be discussing the Common Read book. For those that don't know, everybody should. The Common Read is part of an experience that all first year students coming in are going to have. And for the FYS, the first year seminar courses specifically, there are going to be assignments for that Common Read. And there's also a conference that is associated with it that the speaker that will come will be the author of the book. So those are great sessions in that day. Will probably end actually around 11:30, so it won't actually go till noon. And then on Friday, we have a family and parent orientation option. Again, it's optional, it's not required, but it's intended for parents and families to get any additional questions answered. So similar to this kind of a panel structure, we will provide information and resources, probably updates if we have anything about what the fall semester is going to look like. And then we have a required diversity awareness and U program that we have hired an outside company that will come in and do intentional social justice and diversity engagement experience with our student body that is coming in. So we're really excited to incorporate that into this program. In the afternoon, there is going to be the welcome, the university official welcome, convocation, and that is kind of a celebration of this experience of entering into a new university, and we're really ready to welcome you for that. Next slide. So it's a lot of information, a lot of things. You're like, Emily, how do I obtain all of that? Well, you don't have to do it alone. So we have the app, the Roosevelt University app that Jamar mentioned earlier that you should download. You can actually go to roosevelt.edu/orientation. All of the information about orientation is on that site, in addition to how to download this app. So that information is there for your convenience. Please do that. In your student portal, you see where that little silhouette of a person is there, and we call it the hamburger, those 3 lines. If you press that, just make sure that you're switching to the orientation portal, because there's different portal options when you log in. And then virtual attendance, again, all of the sessions will be Zoom webinar or Zoom meetings. And so those sessions are only intended for registered attendees, fully enrolled incoming students. Reason being, we do actually have some attendance caps with that, those platforms. However, we know that we will get students that are coming and getting registered up until the day of orientation. And so to make sure that it's not difficult for them to participate, we will also have this overflow of attendance opportunity that will be broadcasted via YouTube. So if people miss the orientation deadlines, or if parents want to still participate with the live sessions that are fully accessible and open, they can also watch the YouTube channel. In addition to that, everything is going to be recorded. So if folks are working or they can't be in orientation at the moment for whatever reason, I've received a lot of emails, we will be recording all the sessions, and we also have those pre-recorded sessions, and those will be hosted on our Blackboard site, specified for new student orientation. And then on my last slide, we sent out a summer newsletter this summer, and everybody should have received that information already. That has gone out via email. If you attended new student registration prior to July, you should have received a mailer. And then you should have also received, this is the Common Read book, so Into the Beautiful North by Luis Alberto Huera. And so he is going to kind of be speaking at the conference that I mentioned. However, we're hoping to have a snapshot of like a welcome from him as well, talking about the book. So we're really excited to engage in this. We had our first Common Read book club session this Monday, and the students that participated were super engaged. So if you love reading and you enjoy kind of talking with people about books, please join us and make sure to register for the book club. That's all for me. And next up is going to be Megan Jarmus.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Jarmus. I'm working with the Dean of Students Office to help support your general wellness during your time as a student at Roosevelt. As you've seen throughout our presentation here, our major goal is to support student health and wellness during this time. Your safety is our #1 priority as we return to campus, as well as for those of you who will be returning to campus remotely or virtually in a hybrid format. These plans that you're going to see from me are a result of student demand through some surveys that we did last spring as the semester was wrapping up. We listened to parents as well as obviously current health guidance. And you can certainly reach out to us at any point throughout the semester and the year to look for ways that we can help your general health and wellness. Next slide, please. As a result of our survey, we are happy to share with everyone the fact that we have partnered with a group called the Virtual Care Group that will provide telehealth solutions and behavioral health options for our students. The medical support is available 24/7, 365 days a year. You can get unlimited services from a fully licensed doctor for several general medical conditions. They are able to speak to you about your medical needs in a controlled environment as if you were actually at a doctor's office. And this is going to be a great service for students who are in need of healthcare while they are either on campus, and it's also available to any of you who will be coming to us remotely or even when you return home. As long as you're in the United States and a currently enrolled student, you will have access to this service. Along with this will come the opportunity for you to receive 3 counseling sessions per semester. These will be virtual counseling sessions as well, if you find that you need to access that as well. You will be receiving follow-up information from us directly about how to register, but just really quickly, it will be simple to register through the link that will be provided, as well as being connected to your student ID, and you can just go ahead and directly schedule your telehealth session. Really quick, on our next slide, you might be wondering what you could be treated for. Some of these things will be simple items that you would maybe generally go to a urgent care center. These are definitely non-emergency situations. Don't reach out here if you think you might have broken your leg, for example, or have a major emergency. These are for things like allergies, headaches, fevers, pink eye, urinary tract infections for your unlimited access to the doctors. The talk therapy sessions can be for several items as well, like depression, addiction, PTSD disorders, just life changes, things you might need to talk through. So we are really, really excited to offer you this option. In the current environment, we just wanted to point out that while the doctors can assist you with determining if you have symptoms for COVID-19 that may need follow-up treatment, they cannot offer the order for you to actually get a COVID-19 test. They would suggest then that you follow up with a local healthcare provider to get that option. And finally, as an additional benefit to this, while we do have our on-campus Roosevelt University Counseling Center, we are really excited to offer the opportunity for our counseling center to refer students to the Center for Personal Development, which is located within walking distance of campus. They have options to be treated 7 days per week. And we think this would be a really great additional benefit to the options that you already have available. Students are eligible through this service to receive 8 free sessions per academic year from the Center for Personal Development. This option can work in conjunction with the option that the virtual care group provides of the 3 telehealth sessions per semester. So I really look forward to working with all of you. If you have any other questions, you can feel free to reach out to me, and we will help you with all of your general wellness needs during the year. So look for more information to come on this through email very shortly. And I think now I'm going to send it over to Michael Pfeiffer, who is going to help us answer questions.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael, and I'll be helping to facilitate our question and answer portion. We've received a lot of great questions so far throughout the presentation. If you continue to have questions, please submit those questions in the Q&A box down below. To kick things off, we're going to start with Jamar. It looks like you cut off before finishing discussing the app, so we're going to turn it back over to you to finish talking about the app and ways that we're using it.
Great, thanks, Michael. And again, I do apologize for cutting out earlier, but this is important information, so I am going to go back to it briefly, and we'll return to our questions, because I want to make sure that everyone has the necessary information. So I apologize if it's a little bit repetitive for folks who've been on from the beginning. So as I shared, you will need to complete the daily self-assessment in our RU Return to Campus app. So once you download that, you'll see the very first screen on the left. The very first screenshot on the left-hand side that says Daily Self-Assessment. You'll click on Fill Out My Self-Assessment. You'll need to do this every single day before getting access to campus. On the self-assessment screen, you'll see a number of questions that are intentionally designed to help us understand what risk level may be present for you coming to campus that day. So you'll go through and answer the questions truthfully, and then hopefully you'll receive a green check.
Okay.
You receive
Jamar, you froze a little again. I'm sorry to say.
That's okay. So I will go back to the self-assessment one in the middle. So the questions are intentionally designed to make sure that there is no risk associated with you coming to campus on this daily. So you'll see some after you've completed the self-assessment, you'll receive
Jamar, go ahead and turn off, excuse me, please. Jamar, please turn off your video, okay? Because that'll help a little bit because your voice is cutting in and out.
Okay. Let's see if this is a little bit better. So hopefully you'll see a green check at the end of completing your self-assessment, and that green check is what you will show to the campus safety officers. Again, if you are a residential student, you'll need to show it at the 14th floor before going down into the larger campus. If you are a commuter student, you'll be required to show this prior to coming on to campus. I'm just going to quickly go over the other pieces that I went over earlier, just in case I had cut out on any portion of this. So I'll go through this really, really quickly. So what happens if a student tests positive for COVID or does not get a green check mark? That report will come to the Dean of Students office, at which point we'll reach out to you to determine what next steps are. And that next step could be either isolation or quarantine, depending on what it is that is shared with us. So we'll talk with you about what makes the most sense for your individual concern. Then we'll make a determination of your infectious period. And if it is the case that you need to be in quarantine for a specific number of days, we'll give you the last date that you will need to be in quarantine prior to being allowed to come back to campus. We'll also determine if you had any close contacts with others while on campus and explain what you need to do in order to return to campus life. And all of this information will be kept confidential and only shared with members of the Dean of Student Staff and other university officials who need to absolutely know this information. Other than that, it will be kept confidential in our private servers. So if you're in quarantine or isolation, it's going to look a little bit different if you're on campus versus off. So if you're on campus, we'll be checking in with you daily. You'll be housed on our quarantine floor, and we'll be making sure to provide delivery options for meals for you daily. Obviously, if you're off campus, you won't be living with us, so the daily check-ins won't exist. We'll be doing weekly check-ins instead. We'll also be walking you through the process for quarantine and isolation, and also making sure that you have what you need in order to successfully complete the quarantine at home. And then lastly, in terms of days and times, if you're quarantined, and this is for someone who was a close contact, but not having symptoms themselves, or tested positive, you'll be required to quarantine for 14 days. And this is irrespective of whether or not you have a negative COVID-19 test. Separately, for a student who is in isolation, this is a student who has either tested positive for COVID or is exhibiting symptoms. You'll be required to complete 10 days of isolation with at least 24 hours being fever-free without the use of fever-reducing medications, and you'll need a note from your physician that clears you to return to campus. Alternatively, you could complete a 20-day of isolation, and again, you'll need to be fever-free for 24 hours with no symptoms. At the 20-day mark, you will not need to have a doctor's note if you meet the other established criteria. And then just lastly, going over the Chicago travel order again, as you likely know, Chicago implemented an emergency travel order for any students who are coming to Chicago from a surge state. And the link there will tell you whether or not you're in a surge state or not. If you're coming from one of those states, Chicago has updated the order to allow for students to quarantine in their home states for 14 days prior to arriving in Chicago. This guidance is similar to what the CDC has issued for our students who are traveling back to the States internationally. If you're traveling from any place outside of the United States, you'll also be required to quarantine for 14 days upon your return. Unfortunately, due to space constraints, travel-based quarantine cannot happen on campus because we'll need to utilize our spaces for any students who are testing positive for COVID who are exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms. So I hope that I've answer the question that individuals may have had about those pieces that may have cut out earlier in the presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Michael, who may likely have additional questions for us.
Great, thanks so much, Jamar. The next question is regarding the required COVID-19 tests. Is there a recommended kind of test that should be taken, and will a rapid COVID test be accepted? Jamar, I think that one would be best for you.
Yeah, so and I apologize for not using my camera, but I want to make sure that I stay connected to my internet. So in terms of what types of tests, so we have not prescribed what type of test a student needs to get. There are a variety of different types of tests that are offered, and it will also depend upon where you live. So for example, some states are not using the same test as others. So all that we're saying is that wherever you are, whatever type of test they provide, that will be acceptable for us as long as it is within the 5-day window. And when I say the 5-day window, I'm speaking specifically about the test results. That is what needs to be dated 5 days prior to your move into campus, not the actual date that you take the test.
If a student has already had COVID-19 and they have an antibody test that shows immunity, do they still need another test to move in? Jamar?
Yes, so any student who is moving into the residence halls, despite whether or not they've had COVID-19 or not, or if they've had an earlier test that showed there was negative, they will still need to take a new COVID-19 test dated 5 days prior to move-in that shows that they are negative.
Thank you, Jamar. For a family coming in from out of state to move in their student, do they also need to quarantine prior to move-in? And do guests also need to provide COVID test results for move-in? Hilda or Jamar?
Yeah, I can take that one. No, family members, so the two guests coming in with the student to move in do not need to provide us a COVID test, and they also do not need to quarantine, and that's just because they're going to be here for such a short amount of time.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Would a student who lives out of state be able to commute for in-person classes like labs once or twice a week in light of all the quarantine requirements for out-of-state students?
So it depends upon what state that student lives in. So if they're in a surge state, each time they return home to the surge state, they need to undergo another 14-day quarantine prior to returning to campus. If it is not a surge state, there wouldn't be any reason why a student couldn't commute to campus, although the drive may be a little bit long. There's nothing that will prevent them from being able to do that. So we will leave that up to families to make that individual decision.
All right, this question looks like it's for Hilda. Do students have to provide their own toilet paper and cleaning supplies for the bathrooms in their suites? And are there any campus cleaning that happen in their rooms and suites?
Students do have to provide their own toilet paper and clean their own suite. Cleaning of the suites does not happen once the students move in. So cleaning of the suites only happens when the student moves out. Cleaning of the general areas, hallways, laundry room, lounges will continue to happen with including disinfecting the areas.
Thank you. Okay, next question is, what updates, if any, have been made to the ventilation in the Wabash building? Jamar or Hilda?
So I can take that question. So at this point, there haven't, to my knowledge, been any significant updates to our ventilation system, but I do know that they were checked against safety standards due to COVID-19 and that we were in compliance with where we needed to be, but there were no additional upgrades, to my knowledge, that were made to the ventilation systems in the Wabash building.
Thanks, Jamar. Next question, are security officers still taking temperature at the door if students have a green check mark on their app?
So no, so the purpose of doing the app is to speed up the process of being able to check into campus. So if you don't have the app, or if you haven't completed it for that day, or maybe you lost or left your phone at home, then you will be required to have the temperature check upon your entry to campus. And this would also be the case for any visitors or guests or parents who may be coming as well, because they wouldn't necessarily have the app. So if you have the app and you've done that, you won't need to then additionally go through the process of getting a temperature check once you arrive to campus.
Thank you, Jamar. This question could be for Hilda or for Emily. When and how do students receive their student IDs?
I can take that one. So a couple of answers actually. So if you are a residential student, more than likely if you are moving in during the week, so Monday through Friday, you will be asked to go to Office of the Registrar at some point on your move-in day to get your ID. And the reason why it's important to get get your ID on the day that you move in is because your ID is linked to your access to the building. That's also what you show at the dining center to access your meal plan. And so you get it on the day that you move in at the office of the registrar. If you move in on the weekend, office of the registrar is not open. And so we will give you a temporary card that provides you access to the building. And at the dining center, you will just have to share with the staff member, the cashier, your 9-digit university ID number until you are able to get a ID on Monday or Tuesday of the following week. If you are a commuter student, Emily, is that part of new student orientation?
It is not, because we are completely virtual. Basically, you would follow the same process. You would basically just go to the office and have an individual appointment, but there will not be a scheduled opportunity, which we usually do during orientation. We do shifts of a group of students at a time. But because we are primarily virtual, students who would like their physical ID and plan to come to campus at a certain point, you would need to check in at the security desk and then let them know that you need to go to get your student ID, and they would allow you to go to the office to do that at that point.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next question is, how do students attest that they have quarantined for 14 days prior to coming to campus? Jamar?
Sure. So that is built into our app. So in the app, in the self-assessment, there's a question at the very, very end, which asks if you have, if you're in compliance with the City of Chicago quarantine order. And by answering yes or no, that is your attestation. So students will not have to provide additional documentation that shows evidence that they've complied with the quarantine order. That will be done vis-a-vis the self-assessment app.
Thank you, Jamar. All right, next question is for Emily. Will Roosevelt still be letting new clubs form?
Yes, so we are still allowing, so basically we do ask that you look to see what clubs currently exist that may be similar or aligned with an interest of yours. And if that doesn't exist, absolutely, you would still be able to submit a request to start a new organization.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question is about the COVID tests. How are students supposed to send their test results to Roosevelt, and how soon in advance do we recommend getting the tests there on time?
I can take this one. In the housing portal that I showed you earlier, there is a section called COVID-19 test. There is a little button there where you can upload your test results. So that can be a picture, it could be a PDF, it could be a document, whatever it is. If you get like a text message, so you could probably get a text message, you'll probably get a paper form, anything like that. If you can just take a picture of it and upload it prior to you moving in. On your move-in day, we will then check to make sure that we do have those results and that they are negative.
Thank you, Hilda. A couple of questions about the Common Read book, Emily. The first is the Common Read also required for CCPA students?
Jamar might need to jump in on that. So historically, no. The Common Read is not required for CCPA students. It is optional. And that's why there was an invitation to the CCPA students this week to invite them if they would like to engage. However, I do believe we have shared the Common Read information with CCPA faculty who have all first-year students, and they are thinking of ways that they can incorporate the Common Read into the curriculum. I don't know where that has gone from just that conversation point, but it could happen. So just be prepared that if they do decide to add that into the curriculum or filter it in, I believe there was like a live production of the Common Read, and so they were in conversations about that.
Great, thank you. The next question is from a student who has not yet received their Common Read book. Do you have any recommendations on who they should reach out to figure that out?
So every student should have received an email that provided a virtual free access to a virtual library for the book. So not every student is going to receive a book. We only the students who registered and attended a new student registration session prior to July should be receiving a book. If you did not attend those sessions, there will not be a book that's coming for you. So you should refer to the virtual books that are available. If you did not get your book, it might be lost in the mail. So we have whatever address you gave us when you registered for Roosevelt. So if you've moved since then, that book will not be replaced. It's now lost in transit. So, but all books should have been received by now, is my understanding.
Great, thank you, Emily. The next question is there a location close to campus where a student can receive COVID testing?
Yes, so there are quite a few locations around campus as well as the larger city of Chicago where a student can receive tests. And that's a combination of free tests that are offered through the city and or state, as well as private locations to receive tests, which would be like your immediate cares that are out there. So in the communication that we sent out about quarantine, we provided a link to all of the available locations to provide a test. So go to the COVID-19 website and go to recent updates and then look for the quarantine message, and the link will be provided in that message.
Thanks, Jamar. Okay, next question. Are students allowed to bring their own mattresses? Hilda?
You can bring a mattress pad or a mattress cover. However, you cannot bring your own mattress, and that is just because they are so large. We do provide an extra long twin mattress for every student that lives at the Wabash, and then at the University Center, they also have the extra long twin mattress.
Great, thanks, Hilda. Hilda, we got a couple more questions for you, so I don't know if you just want to keep your mic turned on. All right. Is the housing portal up and ready for students to get their housing assignments?
Yeah, so students who submitted their contracts starting, I would say last week, so beginning in the month of August, we are now giving you assignments rather than you selecting your own room. So it takes us about 3 to 5 business days, so sometime in the week, to provide you with an assignment. So we are processing assignments daily as we receive new contracts. If you completed a contract prior to August 1st and did not go into the portal to select a room, we will also be going through those contracts and contacting you to see, to give you an assignment. So if you, for whatever reason, signed a contract prior to August 1st and now don't have intentions of living on campus, do remember that you need to complete the contract cancellation form, also available through the portal, because if not, you're going to receive an assignment and we will expect that you are moving in.
Thank you. For an incoming student who lives in the UC, they went on and tried to sign up for a movement appointment, and the earliest that they could sign in was for August 29th. Should they try to call and get a new move-in time?
That's a very specific question. So I don't know, there could be a lot going on there. I would say contact the University Center directly. Their email is uchousing@peakcampus.com. Or you can contact the Office of Residence Life and we will direct you that way. There may be something else going on. There may be time slots that are already full. So call us and we will look more into that.
Great, thank you. And there's been a couple of questions about the number of people who will be living on campus this year.
Yes, so as of last week when we last counted, because things change quickly, we are still expected to have somewhere around 500 students living on campus, maybe a little more between, I would say between 500 and 550, 200 over at the University Center, again, give and take some, and then about 3 to 350 here at the Wabash building.
Thank you.
Would you mind adding in a little bit of information about how the rooms have been socially distant in terms of the number of students per suite that are assigned?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a previous communication that we had sent out very early on in the summer, I think this went out probably in May, we shared that the Wabash building in the past, as early as this past academic year, used to have 4 different room types. So you could live in a single, double, triple, or quad, and each one of these bedrooms lived in a larger suite. So even though you had a single bedroom, you could be in a single bedroom in a suite that houses 4 people. So we took every bedroom that was a triple and a quad and closed some of the beds so that there's only a maximum capacity of 2 people living in a shared bedroom, right? So some students have contacted us asking, why does it seem as though I am living in a triple or a quad? Because at one point, as early as last year, that room would have been a triple or a quad bedroom. But for the upcoming year, those triple and quad bedrooms are only going to be occupied by 2 people, right? So maybe you and another person. Again, important to note that there are multiple bedrooms within a suite. Some people have also contacted and asked us saying, I thought I was only sharing my space with one other person. Well, maybe you're sharing your bedroom with only just one other person, but there could be another bedroom in that suite. And so we reduced capacity of those spaces to make sure that we had less amount of people living in each suite.
Thank you. If a student lives nearby campus, can they get their student ID prior to move-in day?
Prior to move-in day, you would have to contact Office of the Registrar, I would say. I know that they are on a reduced schedule at the beginning of August. And so I guess if they are open, then I don't see why you couldn't come.
Thank you. If a student is not on the meal plan, can they use cash or card to purchase food? And will there be a common kitchen available for students to use in the building?
Yes, you can use cash or credit or debit at the dining center, both in the Wabash building and at the University Center. If you, for whatever reason, feel like doing that or are not on the meal plan. What was the second part of the question, Michael?
If there's a common kitchen available in the building?
Yes, there is a common kitchen on the 14th floor of the residence hall. There will be a sign that indicates how many people can be in this space at a time. And so that will limit, right, the people that can use it at one time. There are also common kitchens at the University Center. Although at the University Center, we have a lot of apartments. And so a lot of students have their own personal kitchen.
Thank you. This question is about the University Center. What type of commercial sanitization has happened in the University Center?
Yeah, very similar to what has happened here at the Wabash building. So it has signage all over the place to help people understand where they need to be going. All of their common spaces, their amenity use actually will not start until September 14th. So that is places like the fitness center. They have a big recreation room where you can use like a pool table and things like that. And that is because they want to make sure that they sanitize everything and clean before they allow students to use the spaces. They also have reduced seating capacity in the dining center, just how we have here at the Wabash building. And then cleaning and daily sanitation of those like corridors, elevator buttons, things like that will also happen over there.
Thank you. Let's see. Next question is, can a family or parents take a student out to eat after moving in and then drop them back off in the building?
Yes, I think that would be lovely. We encourage you actually to do something like that. We understand, right, that the 2-hour limit is a very short amount of time. And so my recommendation is that you game plan, right, what's going to happen during that 2-hour limit. Like you come, you literally go up to the room, you drop off the things, maybe you kind of cover the most important things. And then maybe you head out and spend some more time outdoors, eating, grabbing lunch, maybe shopping, whatever errands the student and you all need to run. And yeah, the student then can be dropped off once you're done.
Thank you, Hilda. The next question is for Emily. Should student orgs plan to have all of their events online for the time being?
Not necessarily. So if there are students that are living on campus, for example, and as long as they're adhering to our process and regulations around meeting. So right now we're still in stage 4. And so I believe that means as long as you're 6 feet apart, right, and there's no more than 50 people in a space at a time, every room my understanding on campus that we use for event spaces has new capacity limits. So we would have to work with that group to identify, is it just a board meeting? Do they have 4 people, right? I would encourage you to think about who physically is comfortable coming to campus, and always have a virtual option for folks that do not feel comfortable or are not able to for health reasons, right? For any additional concerns. So the answer is yes, and like people can still meet. We will still have virtual opportunities. Week of Welcome, for example, we're trying to work to have virtual options as well as some in-person tactical things. So that are like grab and go, or, you know, something that people can interact with, but maybe on the go. So we're still working that out, but not completely, unless the city and the state decide that we have to regulate in a different way. But right now we are capable of allowing groups to congregate and meet together, as long as they're following protocols, which will all go through during student org and registration training. So all of that will thoroughly be talked about during that point.
Thank you, Emily. Next question, do the Wabash building windows open at all for extra ventilation?
They do. So they open, I would say, about 3 to 4 inches that students can open on their own. Every suite also, actually every bedroom has their own HVAC unit that has its own thermostat. So students are able to control the temperature of the space, or if they want to turn off the AC and or the heat at the time.
Thanks, Hilda. If a student wants to start living on campus starting in January, would they be able to do so?
I will take that as well. Yes, so we always have a rolling application, housing application. So what that means is that at any point you can apply for housing and sign a contract. And if we have rooms available, we will assign you. And so this is really important to note for students who have already canceled their contract. Say that, you know, a couple weeks ago, or even maybe in early July, you decided that you wanted to cancel. And so you did. However, let's say that, you know, things develop and you are feeling more comfortable and you want to come back and live on campus maybe in November. You can complete the housing application and contract, and we will assign you, and we will arrange a move-in date. There aren't a whole lot of people that, you know, we don't have like a designated move-in day for each month, but we will just set one up individually with you and you could come. Same thing for students that are coming to, wanting to come to live on campus only for spring. Maybe you decided, I'm gonna sit fall out for housing, but I really would like to live on campus in the spring. The spring only application opens on October 1st, and same thing, apply for housing, fill out your contract, we will assign you and set up a move-in date with you.
Thank you, Hilda. The next question is, how will social distancing rules and requirements be enforced? And who specifically will be enforcing these guidelines on a daily basis?
I will take that question. So as part of the daily self-assessment in the app, there's a question that basically says, I agree that I will comply with all Roosevelt University rules and regulations around COVID-19. So each student is required to declare that they intend to follow these policies. And so as a result of that, in addition to the other policies that we have on campus, all students are subject to the Student Code of Conduct. And where students are not following and being in compliance with our requirements as it relates to COVID, those students will be getting outreach from the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities that Michael oversees. And so that is how we will be helping to not only educate students, but also support students and hold students accountable to making sure that we're keeping the campus community safe.
Great, thank you, Jamar. All right, next question. Will our families be allowed to come visit us after we move in? Specifically after the 2-hour window, will they be able to come up and visit the apartment at that point? Hilda?
Yes, I can take that one. So as I shared on my slide, during the month of August in the Wabash building, we will not allow any guests unless you are moving in. However, after, we are calling that phase one, by the way, and that is how it's listed in the residence hall policies. After the month of August, so starting on September 1st, all Wabash residents, as long as public health organizations in the city of Chicago allows us to have, to be in a good place, we will allow every resident to check in one guest at a time. Now, we understand that becomes difficult for family and friend visits, but you do just need to coordinate with your friends and family for their visits. And at the University Center, guests will start to be allowed on September 14th.
Great, thank you, Hilda. Right, it looks like there are a few questions about the 5 days prior to moving in for receiving your test. So if either Jamar or Hilda could speak to specifically, is it the test result date that needs to be within 5 days or when the actual test was taken?
Really great question. So it is the results. So the results have to be in and dated at least 5 days, no greater than 5 days from your move-in date. So for example, if my move-in is, let's say, on August the 20th, then my test results have to be dated between August 15th and the 20th, essentially. But I could have had my test done, let's say, August 11th, which is fine as long as my results come back 5 days in that 5-day window.
Great, thank you, Jamar. Okay, if a student moves into campus on the 19th of August and classes don't start until the 31st, are they allowed to go home and then come back to campus, and would they need another COVID test?
No, so a student who moves in will not need another COVID test. The only thing that might happen is if that student is coming from a surge state and they choose to go back home after they moved in, they will need to complete another 14-day quarantine prior to returning to campus.
The next question is, what are the restrictions on visitors in the building for the rest of the year after move-in happens? Hilda?
Repeat the question, Michael.
Yes. What are the restrictions on visitors in the building for the rest of the school year after move-in?
Yes, so September 1st and on, residents will be allowed to have one guest through the end of the academic year. If at any point we decide that it's no longer safe to have guests, we will send out an announcement saying you can no longer have guests. But hopefully, if everything continues to go well, then one guest it is until the end of the academic year.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's see, next question. Can students take the science labs online if they don't feel comfortable going in person?
Hi, this is Katrina. I will answer that for you. Yes, students will be able to take any of the courses online if they're not comfortable doing so. Please just make sure that you speak with your faculty member and ask for very specific questions that you may have about that. In addition, they're trying to work out some more details. Kelly Wentz-Hunter is working on more details about how students can do that from home and still complete the learning objectives needed for a science lab. Thanks.
Great, thank you. All right, the next question. With Chicago Public Schools announcing remote-only classes, how will this have an effect on Roosevelt? Jamar?
Thanks for that question. I think it's a really great question. We did see that recent announcement from CPS. And CPS is a completely different system, obviously, than Roosevelt is. We don't govern ourselves by what CPS decides to do, although it will certainly impact our students who may be parents who have to figure out what their childcare options are, as well as some of our faculty and staff members who'll be working with our internal university to determine any alterations to their work schedule that may be needed. It certainly isn't a decision in terms of whether or not we will be fully remote or not. So for us at Roosevelt, we've made the determination of which classes can and cannot be virtual and have communicated that out to all students vis-a-vis Course Finder. And so it's really up to students and their families to decide what is the best scenario for them, whether that be to be in person fully or remote or some combination thereof.
Great, thank you, Jamar. If a student needs to be quarantined, are they allowed to go to their home to finish the quarantine, or should they stay on campus?
That's a really great question, and the answer is a resounding yes. We would strongly prefer that if a student is able, that they do their quarantine and or isolation at home, if at all possible. If not, that is exactly why we've set aside rooms in both of our residence halls for the purposes of quarantine and isolation. But ideally, that student would go home if they were able to do so.
And I just wanted to add, anytime that we will be asking a student to enter quarantine, there is an agreement that outlines the terms of quarantine, and it really, we hope that explains what quarantine is. In that document, we explain how meals will work, when meals will be delivered, the fact that students can't really leave the room. And so if a student feels uncomfortable by our quarantine parameters and they have the ability to go home, to Jamar's point, they have the ability to decline our offer to go, or our request to go into quarantine, and say, instead, I'm going to leave the residence hall and go to my home.
Great, thank you. This is a question about laundry on campus. Are the laundry facilities free, or do they have to pay for each time to do laundry?
Wabash laundry usage is free. At the University Center, students do have to pay to use the washers and dryers. It's something like $1.50 to wash and $1.25 to dry, something like that.
Thanks, Hilda. Okay, looks like we're nearing the end of some of the questions. I'm trying to find another one. Are classes for both campus and commuter students being held in person? And if so, are COVID tests required to attend the classes if they're in person?
So there is no requirement of a negative COVID-19 test if you are a commuter student. The requirement for COVID-19 testing is only applicable to our students who are living in the residence hall. So if you are a commuter student who's taking an in-person class, we obviously ask that you follow the safety guidelines and the measures outlined in our policies, as well as daily checks with the self-assessment. But other than that, there isn't anything specific that you would need to do.
Great, thank you, Jamar. There's a few questions about knowing what the surge states are, and if there is a specific website people should be monitoring to know if they live in one of those states.
Yeah, so in this PowerPoint presentation earlier in the portion that I talked about as it relates to the City of Chicago quarantine order, there is a link, and that link will take you directly to the City of Chicago website that lists all of the states that are considered surge states. And that list is updated every Tuesday. So I'd encourage everyone to go and just ensure that their state to determine if their state is listed on that site, and to check back regularly so that you know that if it changes, that you'll be in compliance when it's time for move-in day.
If a student goes out of state for less than 3 days, would they have to quarantine when they return to campus?
Again, it depends on what state they went to. So if they went to a surge state, no. But if they were in a surge state for longer than a 24-hour period, the City of Chicago quarantine order says that they are required to undergo another 14-day quarantine.
Great, thank you. How will tutoring and paper review work on campus look if students are not on campus? Katrina, I think you're muted still.
Sorry, okay. We have embedded tutors into a lot of our math and English courses for this coming fall, and we will still have smart tutoring. It's online. You can link it through Blackboard, even your RU Access page. In addition, any paperwork for accommodations can still be sent to, I'm going to pull up the email address so I say it correctly. You can do academicsuccess@roosevelt.edu, or you can do email JD Collins, JD_COLLINS @roosevelt.edu. That's on our FAQ website, but they are taking that paperwork right now. And tutoring, again, is mainly going to be virtual. So there will be appointments that you can schedule through the EAB app, but you can also email these emails to set up an appointment, and as well as the paperwork. So there will be a little bit of in-person tutoring sessions, but most of it's going to be virtual this coming fall. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's see. I think we have time for one more question here. If an in-person class, if in-person classes get canceled again because of COVID, do students who live on campus have to leave? So similar to what happened in the spring. Hilda or Jamar?
No, so similar to what happened in the spring, the residence halls will remain open for student usage, even if we have to go fully remote in the fall semester. The only way that our residence halls will close is if we are directed to do so by the city of Chicago or other public health officials.
Great, thanks, Jamar. And Jamar, do you want to take it back over to wrap things up?
Absolutely. Thanks so much. So we really appreciate you guys sticking with us for the hour and a half. We hope that we've answered all of your questions, but please know that if you have any other questions after this session is over, you can always reach out to dos@roosevelt.edu. That's the Dean of Students email account, and we'll be happy to field any questions that you all have about student life or student affairs after today. And lastly, this webinar will be available tomorrow at the below link, blogs.roosevelt.edu/coronavirus. And we will also be sending out a communication that has this as well. So with that, I thank you all for your time and your attention, and I look forward to welcoming you back come fall. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.